Good evening, everybody. My name is Kavin Kumar Kandasamy, and thank you, Santosh, for the very kind words. I only hope that I'm deserving of it. And thanks to GNFZ and IIT, the School of Sustainable Studies, for giving us this opportunity to come together. Now, most often when I come here, I always tell people my job is not to do what my teams do better than me, but to tell the narrative of climate. Climate is not a challenge. Climate is an opportunity because all challenges need to be, addressed with the utmost ability of mankind. Right. So today, what I'm going to go through for you in the next 5 to 10 minutes is to see how we are seeing it as an opportunity. Blur the lines between net zero as a challenge and climate as an opportunity. So bear with me and feel free to ask any questions in between. But I have a 15-minute stop, I'm told. And if the teams let us, then we'll carry on with the questions later. Right. So about ProClime, ProClime is what you would call a climate company. And when I say climate company, LinkedIn does not even categorize us as a climate company yet. We're an environmental company, but I would tell you we are a climate company. Today, ProClime is Singapore headquartered, but we operate across India, Sri Lanka, Nepal, and Bangladesh. We have more than 29 projects in our pipeline, 6 projects that we're working actively on, and we have an important word that I will highlight very often called emissions under management. Look at it like assets under management. If you had to look at emissions as currency, emissions as an opportunity, it needs to be seen as emissions and under management. And that was coined by ProClime to make collaboration much easier. Because if you and I can speak the same language, we understand each other. And that's the whole ability of convening with each other, right? So climate is just not an emission problem. Let's not just look at it only as an emission challenge, right? You have to look at it as an ecosystem challenge. But it's easier to measure with a unit economics of emissions. And what you can see out there, this is from IPCC, that emissions concentrations leads to poverty, insecurity, health issues, water scarcity, life dependability as we know it. And as Mr. Shah spoke about, it needs to be charged up, right? So we're looking at emissions and how we can look at the whole carbon markets from an emissions challenge to an opportunity. So with that being addressed, let's go to India. Now, what does the emission landscape in India look like? This must be from 23 or 22. I don't think this is 25 or even 24. So we're looking at power still being one of the major contributors to the emission landscape in India. And much to a lot of people's surprise, agriculture. Don't blame them. We need to be fed. But then you also have buildings, the built environment, which is contributing to it. But then you have a cycle of other emissions that come into this, right? So today, I know with GNFZ as our partner and, with a built environment in focus, how can we blur the lines between certification that rewards your efforts and then how do you offset all those that you cannot limit in current technology, okay? So here is something that a lot of people, just look at that chart to the right with the gray and the orange. Now, the gray, I know this is a little small, but we'll circulate it later. Gray is the number of emissions that happened in 2020-21. These are validated, vetted by peers on so many different forums, so they are non-debatable. That's 48 gigatons of emissions. And all the other green areas that you can see is carbon markets, carbon taxes, compliance markets, everything trying to mitigate emissions. But the orange is still emissions out there. That was let out in 2020, and they're still circulating in the environment for you with nobody fixing it yet, right? So the problem is not science. The problem sometimes is not intent. The problem sometimes is just ensuring that we find the urgency to say that if you invest now, you will save more much later, right? Because if you push it for later, more resources also is not going to be able to save you from the reversal. Again, much of my speakers before me have alluded to that. But we also see as a problem is there are good certifications and not so good certifications. There are good projects and not so good projects. I don't want to call them bad projects because they at least taken the effort. But then good quality projects are what drive the markets forward. And what you can see on the left chart over there, triple, C with the purple and all of that, those are all the poor quality projects. And what you see to the extreme right is where bankability is. And those projects are called AA's and AAA's in rating. Now, how many such projects are there? You can see it's just lesser than 1%. Now, you'd want to get there. You'd want to get to measurable impact, defined measurable impact. And that is what carbon markets gives you as an opportunity if we all agree with each other, which is academia, industry, finance, business, politics, media, everybody coming together, right? Now, again, another big chart, but let's take a look at the opportunity in terms of absolute numbers. Today, the voluntary market stands at about $2 billion, and I'll explain what the voluntary markets are just for the greater insight of most people who haven't been initiated in that, right? And the compliance markets in Europe alone are worth about $850 billion. Now, for a lot of you who do not know my background, I started off in, retail and then moved to education. I've had the good opportunity of setting up from 1 to 7 schools. In my yester life, until 2020, I was focused completely on education. And I felt at that age, education was an important problem to solve. But then I became a father. I said, important problems can be done by other people too. And there will be more people better than me equipped to deal with that problem. And then I said, what's the most urgent problem? Climate. How can we fix it? By making it an opportunity, right? So when we looked at that, we said climate as an opportunity is the only narrative we need to go forward with. If not, you're not going to entice people to come into it. And these numbers do not lie. As the confidence grows from 2 billion, we're expecting the market to be at $250 billion in the carbon market space by 2030. By 2050, we expect it to be at $1 trillion, addressing very many different types of impact on Mother Earth, right? And if you look at that chart on the top, it's very interesting because you would see the bottom is from energy and there's something called avoided emissions. That means if you didn't do this, those emissions wouldn't come out. But who's going to fix all those emissions that went out there already? And that's the top line over there, the light green, which is called removal credits. Removal emissions, anything that can remove the legacy impact that we have is now being valued very high, and rightfully so. And that is why a lot of companies are looking for AA, AAA rated, high integrity, high quality projects. Now, with that narrative set, I'm going to look at what is the solution. Now, again, ProClime in a market where there is not too much precedence, we've always had the trouble and the privilege of building our own narrative. And we would like to call ourselves a full stack. Now, like I know most people at IIT would look at it from a tech stack perspective, we look at it from a value stack. ProClime does projects, ProClime does trade, investments, and advisory services. And for most of you who have read about us, you all know we have pledged $150 million in investments. And that is all by sheer will of building capacity with the governments and more. And I'm looking to learn from a lot of people over here. Now, again, I didn't prepare for this screen, so you're going to look at this from here. Normally, the carbon projects go through 3 simple stages. 1, you originate a project. That means you go looking for certain attributes to say, hey, if I did this here, there will be impact here. And that's called origination. Second is development, the light green. And third is the offsetting. You sell it to people who think they cannot reduce their emissions any further, and they buy it off your impact so that their emissions are neutralized. This can be carbon neutral or working up all the way to net zero, right? So the market is broken down into 4 sectors. The one that a lot of people know is voluntary carbon markets. Let's say companies around here choosing to say, hey, listen, I want to go net zero. Whether somebody puts a gun to my head or not, we're going ahead because the market likes it. That's called the voluntary market. India has announced a compliance market. It's almost like a gun to your head. If you don't decarbonize and if you don't reduce your emissions by so much quadrant, you will have to pay a price as good as a gun to your head. So that's called the compliance market. When a country sees itself, and we have our friends from Sri Lanka here representing the government of Sri Lanka and their institution, Sri Lanka has a very low emission per capita. Now, can they see that as a resource? Can they sell their service to Mother Earth to another country that is looking to decarbonize and say, hey, you couldn't do it, but can we sell our service to you? ProClime works with Nepal. And Nepal is providing a significant service through the glacier ecosystems. Can they sell it? So those happen under the Article 6 markets. So companies, country level engagement to engagement. And that's a cheat sheet for the carbon markets at a stretch, right? Now, what we would like most of you to know is what is your impact from your various, you can be an IT company, you can be a FMCG, you can be a banking service provider, anything. What is your environmental impact? And those are categorized under something that we call environment attribute certificates, which are again commonly known as carbon credits too. Now, that's a crash course that took me 6 months to learn. So most of you, I hope you understand what carbon credits are right now. Now, there are energy carbon credits, and then there are other type of carbon credits. Energy is not suitable for carbon credits anymore. Solar and wind are out of something that we call additionality, which means they will happen with or without carbon money, right? So they only get something called renewable energy certificates, and ProClime is managing 3.5 gigawatts of power right now in the last 2.5 years through the International Renewable Energy Certificates model. So there are two types of attributes, carbon markets and renewable energy certificates. Now, again, is the market active? The very fact that I can show a sheet like this and say that there are originators, there are developers, there are verification bodies, there are audit bodies, there are marketplaces, which means the carbon market ecosystem is thriving. It's bustling. This year alone, $10 billion were committed to carbon origination companies or developers, right? So that tells you that major companies from Microsoft to the Salesforces to the Google, everybody, as much as they accelerate through their growth in AI, they're looking to offset because they cannot dwindle their energy impact or environmental impact. So they have to counter somewhere, at least removing their contributions and emissions to Mother Earth. Now, what is ProClime's immediate mission? We'd like to have 500 million emissions under management by 2029, which means when we start a project, and our good friend here will be talking about one project that we're working on. When we start a project, to the end of its life cycle, if it mitigates, removes X amount of emissions, we will say on day one, ProClime is managing so many emissions. Today, our vision, our immediate mission is to have 500 million emissions under management. And like Mr. Tapan said, it's not for us to reap the benefits, it's for the future generations to reap the benefits, but we would have definitely set the ball rolling. And through the power of incentivization as well, and I'll show you how. So that is our active pipeline right now. We are working with the government of Sri Lanka, we are working in Nepal, we're working in Bangladesh, we're working with 8 states in India, and most of our projects are in the agroforestry, afforestation sector. We're working on mangroves in Sri Lanka and have pipelines of mangroves in India. We're working on agricultural fields, helping farmers go climate friendly and rewarding them for that. The only way you can get them to sustain this impact is through rewards, right? For 40 years, if they get paid, nobody's going to go back, right? So that's what we're doing. And today, I'm very proud to say that we have an active emissions under management where we have forward sold these commitments to the tune of about $300 million, and we have a pipeline with our various partners for 100 million emissions under management, and they're all in the high integrity AA, AAA sector, which produces a pipeline of $2 billion, which will be shared with communities, governments, stakeholders, everybody alike, because only if they get paid will they continue to sustain this, right? So climate is an opportunity for you right in front of your eyes. Now, one of our case studies I'd like to show is we're restoring 5,000 hectares of mangroves. And for those of you who'd like to know more about this, you can talk to our country manager. Rukman, may I just get you to wave? And this is a combination of AI, digital tech, everything from originating which sites to choose, all the way to choosing the right species to plant and monitoring its impact over 40 years and sharing our proceeds of the revenue with the community. That will put about $50 million back into those vulnerable communities on the coastlines in the east coast of Sri Lanka. Now, of course, the other project, Dr. Inoka here might address more about that. But this is just for you guys to know how a project from design to impact is delivering. Now, what's happening in India? Again, for those of you who do not know, there are more than 5,500 projects registered in India, right? And they are spread across agriculture all the way down to even transport, in mining, so on and so forth. And this is something, when we work with a lot of governments, a lot of players, we tell them with absolute conviction, climate is just not an opportunity, climate, I mean, it's something that goes on to build ecosystems for really pushing forward into other areas of growth too, because it's an ecosystem effect, and I'll show you more about it. Again, since we're at IIT, I thought I'll give a little bit of boasting here. ProClime has delivered the world's first project origination engine, and we haven't communicated this outward anywhere, except now we're doing it here. What you can see there is you can originate blue carbon, that is mangroves. You can originate afforestation projects, agriculture projects. They've been cut from 9 months to 10 days, which means you know where to go develop those projects much sooner. After that, you have to work with the communities, you'll have to work with the government, you'll have to work with everybody to get their approvals. But that is what it is, right? That we cannot automate so much, but this we can. And it's a multi-parametric model, which we are very, very proud of. Now, something that I'd like to highlight, which again, most of the peers of the market have started taking resonance in. These 8 core pillars, some of them additionality, transparency, longevity, permanence, high integrity, all that is fine. But they are hesitant to talk about the narrative. I can tell you 30% of our premium comes from the power of storytelling. From telling people that you and I should work together and convincing them at an innate level that this is something that you want to work on, right? ProClime invests a lot in building those narratives because that weaves better opportunities. And the other one is, of course, sound financials. We do not touch a project if we do not know how to keep it sustainable over 25 years to 40 years, right? And one of the big projects we're working on is removing invasive species, which most people did not know how to remove because governments are concerned that they can't spend the money to remove. ProClime is putting up 7 plants across India. We will highlight it in due course. I'm just looking at Vijay to say how much I can say or not. But this will remove about 750,000 tons almost of invasive species economically every year, right? So climate has solutions that you can bring to the forefront. Now, last 2 slides. Now, this is something that people say, hey, listen, my project, how much will it fetch? If designed the right way, like you said, if done with the right intent and got all the attributes. What I would like to highlight is you can see some projects that are nature-based, some projects that are biochar, removal, and all of this. If I just take it here, you can see one project is worth only $0.63 per ton. And you can see another project at $155 per carbon credit. Why is there such a parity? And that's where the science and the truth is. Impact that is really verifiable fetches you the premium, right? So that said, ProClime does not invest in transactions. We invest in ecosystems, and we are proud to call IIT a certain partner, and we look forward to bringing their academia and their foresight to the market. We're also working with Global Network for Zero, and as mentioned by Mr. Shah here, ProClime is the founding partner for Green Hydrogen Organization in India, and we're also the founding partner for International Hydropower Association in India. So with that said, we are building ecosystems. We don't go transactions. We work with partners to build more projects. That's how we have impact on the ground. Now, that's the team that makes it happen, of course, and happy to take questions, but maybe later. I know before you make me sit down. And thank you, everybody. Thanks for listening to me.